Welcome to Heroic Journeys, Leveling Up with Chantel and Tamara. This episode is all about soul.
Yes.
What it means to us and what it means to you.
We tried a little bit to define what is soul, and it led us into a big rabbit hole. So we're going to talk a little bit about what that means to us and hopefully get you thinking about what that means to you.
Yeah, because it is such a personal thing. It's such a deep and personal thing when we feel that resonance in our soul.
Mm-hmm. And I want to start maybe by saying something that might be a bit controversial for some people, but I think that some expressions of modern religion have really cheapened the idea of soul. We live in a Bible Belt region, and when we hear talk about soul, a lot of it is about saving souls, and this idea that the soul is the part of you that either gets punished or rewarded at the end of your lifetime. And to me, the soul is so much larger than that. It's a much higher, more noble concept. It's an interesting thing. I am trained in guided imagery and music, which is a therapy that uses music and imagery for people to really connect on a deep level with themselves. And I have felt often in a session with somebody that they are connecting with their soul when the imagery comes up. And the most interesting thing is that if you work with somebody through a number of sessions and they go through a process, they will eventually get to a point where in their imagery, they are in some kind of a royal setting. And they'll have, and often it's women because men don't access this type of therapy as much, but they'll have on some kind of a royal gown. They might have a crown on their head, and it happens again and again and again. And what that tells me is that our soul is this noble part of us that is connected both to the deepest and the highest of what we are meant to be.
And that really ties into the heroic journey, because on the heroic journey, we are shifting out of the victim mindset of, we're right or wrong. If we're wrong, we need to be punished, like that whole enslavement that you were talking about earlier with religion. And just, I don't know, like how we can be the hero by accessing that nobility, that we do get to choose our resonance, and it's our resonance that creates our future.
I'm going to share one of my absolute favorite quotes of all time, and this is Walt Whitman, the poet, and he said, "Re-examine all that you have been told in school or church or in any book, and dismiss whatever insults your soul, and your very flesh shall be a great poem."
Ooh.
And so this, we enlarge ourselves with the resonance of what touches us on a deep level, what expands us inside. I think of the soul as that North Star that sets us on our path, our heroic path, and keeps leading us forward on our heroic journey with signs and synchronicities along the way, through dreams and symbols that, resonate deeply.
Yeah. It's something that we don't really have the language for. It's hard to articulate, but I feel like it's about being, like, and appreciating.
Yeah, I think part of why we struggle with this is that we're so used to defining things with words and concepts and categories, and the soul is really only expressible through modalities like the arts. When you see, Vincent van Gogh, when you see the Starry Night painting, you look at that and you say that is a person who was resonating with their soul when they painted that. I'm going to actually do something here because right behind us, if you look up, this beautiful painting is from a friend of mine who I consider an extremely soulful artist. Does these magnificent floral paintings, and I feel like when I look at that painting, the paintings that she creates, that I can connect with my soul, and it's a whole world that I would want to go into, and it would expand me and just bring out the music of my soul. I'm going to leave a link to her website down below.
And you were talking about music too, and
Yeah.
we were talking about musicals, and just like, I know Mamma Mia is a musical that really touched my soul. The second Mamma Mia movie is all about like the grandmother figure who had died, but you see her often in the movie, and how, you know, at the end, how it all just kind of comes together. And I don't know, I just really love that.
I'm gonna have to watch that one again.
So good, yeah. But like the music in the movie, it really touched my soul. And I mean, in a lot of movies, or even, you know, if you want to cry, sometimes like my kids watch, what's that one where the two old people, they die together on their bed?
Oh, The Notebook.
The Notebook,
oh,
yeah. Whenever
goodness,
they feel like they really need to cry, they watch that together. Because it does touch the soul.
Oh, I mean, I could name offhand, well, of course, Lord of the Rings is my go-to for, because it's just such a mythological, expansive version of life. But I think of Dead Poets Society, and you know, using poetry to really connect with that resonance of what means something to you. What is your life calling you to do? Make your life extraordinary. Seize the day.
And you are a poet. You're an author of a book of poems.
Oh, that's another thing that I think has really been cheapened, often by the way it's taught. And this, again, analytical need to go in and find devices and analyze the poem, when really a poem is written to express what the soul wants to say. So I feel sad for anyone who doesn't have a creative outlet. But a creative outlet could be listening to music. And I think every one of us needs to have those soul connections by watching the movies that move us, by reading novels that move us, by listening to music.
Because music,
dancing.
Yeah, music connects both sides of the brain, and dancing connects the body too. So it's just a integrative thing.
Yeah. Have you seen the movie I Am Sam?
Probably a long time ago.
Sean Penn, he plays an intellectually disabled adult who has a child, and then the world needs to intervene and take this child from him because he's not capable.
I remember that.
And it just brings out so clearly the idea of what the world considers competence, and what actually is, from a soul level, what is competence, which is actually seeing to the heart, to the depth of a matter, and going straight to what really, really matters. It makes me think of another Bible verse that Jesus said, "What good is it for someone to gain the world and lose their soul?" And you see that so often in movies, in real life, people who have everything, and they just keep needing more and more and more, because it's never enough. And the soul-shaped hole in your life can't be filled with money and things.
And even on the movie Soul, there's lost souls on there who have like disconnected with life or very depressed, and it reminds me of Sonia Choquette and how she calls the spirit back into the body. You know, for someone who's feeling depressed, if you list the things you love, you call your soul back, call your spirit back.
And if you're attuned, you can really feel someone whose soul has gone wandering, or who just feels empty. They have this grasping quality. Can I tell a story?
Please do.
So this is one of my favorite, most amazing stories about somebody reconnecting with their soul. There was a man, he's no longer living. His name was Patrice Malidoma Some, and he was raised in Africa. I'm going to forget the country now, but on the west coast of Africa. His people were still living their traditional way. And when he was very young, the Jesuit priests came from a mission that was some distance from his village, and they kidnapped him. He was 4 years old. They took him to their mission and dressed him in European clothes and put him to school. And from that point on, he didn't see his family again. He had no contact until he was 19. And so during all this time, he was receiving a European education and they were deliberately training him to look down on his culture and the way they connected with nature and their rituals and the worldview that they had. And then at age 19, he ran away from the mission school, and somehow he found his way back to his village. It was actually 125 kilometers. He found his way by foot. And so he hasn't seen his family for 15 years. But somehow his mother and sisters recognized him and they welcomed him back. But not everyone in the village was sure that he belonged because he couldn't speak his language anymore. He was trained to think differently. He could not, and he was angry. He felt like he had been placed in two worlds and he didn't really belong in either one. And so the elders got together to decide, what do we do with this person? He doesn't belong in our village anymore. He's been trained, his mind has been kind of captured and his soul has gone wandering. And so they decided he had to go through the initiation rites that they would normally do with boys when they turn 13. And this is a dangerous thing because these are real tests of endurance and strength and bravery. And it involves learning how to live in the wilderness and take care of yourself and find your own food. And some of the tests that they put these kids through could actually result in death if they don't survive. And so this was a really serious undertaking because the worst that could happen was he could die, or he could fail his initiation and not belong anymore. And so the one thing that happened towards the end of the initiation, he kind of made it through the different stages, and then the last thing he was asked to do was to sit and look at a tree until he could see its true nature. And he sat and sat and sat and sat, and his mind was telling him, this is stupid, it's a tree. What is the true nature of a tree? It's a tree, it has a trunk and branches and so on. And he sat there for something like 3 days in the hot sun, just sweltering, trying to figure out what was going on with this tree. And he finally reached the end of his endurance and just broke down, and he was so angry about what had happened to him and that he was being forced to go through this and potentially fail and be abandoned by his people. And then after his outburst, and he started just crying out in despair, and he finally said, I'm the problem here. I just can't see what I'm supposed to see. And at that moment, there was a transformation, and instead of the tree, he saw this beautiful green lady in a black tunic, and she had a veil over her face, and she lifted the veil, and it was like she was shining with an inner light from within, and she looked at him with such an expression of love. And all of a sudden, he just found himself in her arms, and it was like he had been welcomed home, and this was a place of beautiful unconditional love. And after a time, he realized that she was telling him it was time to part, and he didn't want to let go, but slowly the transformation changed back, and he found himself hugging a tree. And at that moment, the elders knew that he had found the essence of the tree, and he was home. And he went on to become somebody who kind of bridged the two cultures then, and he went to the US and started teaching people about the importance of ritual and reconnecting with their true nature and with nature. And to me, that is a story that expresses what is the soul and how do we come back home to ourselves.
Yeah, I was learning about spirit this week, and like that everything has a spirit, like everything that we interact with, including trees. And I love storytelling because it's so symbolic, and you know what's going on in the subconscious as you listen to a story is transformational too.
Yeah,
everything has a symbol meaning to it.
Well, and I think on a soul level we are programmed to respond to stories. And you talked about when we were talking about the nobility of soul and choosing our heroic journeys. And if you listen to any amount of near-death experiences, often the idea comes up that on a soul level, we actually choose our experiences maybe not everything that happens to us, but we sort of plan what it is that we want to experience or accomplish. What is our sort of our heroic journey going to be?
Yeah, like what our challenges are. And
Yeah.
I feel like religion has, placed that idea that, if we face a challenge, we've done something wrong, when it's not the case at all. And I really feel that when I went from victim to the hero was when I was able to see that, wow, like I chose this. Or even like my mentor in Winnipeg, like when something happens that normal people would be in resistance to, like, oh man, this totally wrecks my plan, my day, you'd be like, well, I'm just going to pretend that I planned it this way and just roll with it.
Yeah.
And that just takes us out of resistance and lets energy flow through us again.
I think there's something really beautiful about the idea that we have had a hand in charting our heroic journey. And from that standpoint, you can surrender a little bit, and trust the force, Luke, that there's a current flowing through our life that is somehow under the guidance of our soul. And even when you make mistakes and have major screw-ups, there's this trust that it can be turned to a good account.
And just like, I don't know, just connecting to that, to spirit, like just that we are part of spirit, connecting to our own divinity. Like how can one be empowered if one is not connected to their own divinity?
Yeah, then everything is reliant on our mind and the knowledge that we have. And that doesn't actually feel expansive.
Touch on how you see religion versus spirituality.
Well, religion to me is a system that more or less gets imposed on people. There's a conditioning that happens. There tend to be rules around it.
Like beliefs, right? Beliefs almost create our resonance.
Yeah, I think more and more it's become a mental construct. What do you believe? How do you think? How do you behave? Whereas the soul is just really this much more expansive resonance. You called it a resonance with the all. And we connect through it. We connect to it in many ways, through our dreams, through the signs and symbols that resonate around us, like synchronicities that happen. There's lots of ways that the soul speaks to us.
And I feel like things that trigger us are a gateway to, finding that inner meaning, to transforming those things so that we don't get triggered by them anymore.
And I want to say too that like religion and spirituality do not necessarily have to be opposed.
No.
I know people who are very religious who are also extremely spiritual and very much in touch with their soul. But I think that often by reducing things to a set of beliefs or rules, we sort of put people on a superficial level where it's like, if I do all the right things, then I'm taking care of my soul, rather than how does my spirituality open me to hear what my soul has to say.
Yeah, I definitely see, like, I was raised super religious. I didn't want my kids to fall into that, and they asked if they could go to church, and I'm just like, make sure that church is love-based and preaches love and doesn't preach hate or fear. To me, that's the difference between spirituality and
I
religion.
I think the minute we go into a space of fear, we lose the resonance with our soul. And then we become very susceptible to being controlled and manipulated. And so I think soul, as we connect to our soul, we open up and expand. And so to me, that is the test. Does it expand me? Does it bring me into the largest version of who I can be? And if it doesn't, it's like Walt Whitman, then it's insulting my soul, and I need to dismiss it.
Yeah, that's why I left the church, because the belief that was taught there was, if anyone believes anything against us, we must shun them. And that insulted my soul, and I left.
Yeah, and on the other hand, I have had aspects of, church experience that have really expanded and opened me. Experiences of singing in choirs and beautiful music.
I love that. I love hymns.
Yeah.
I mean, some of the wording of some, I'm not saying I love all hymns, but I love like the music of hymns. And
teachings of social justice and serving other people. Those are all things that have expanded and opened me. So Yeah, so this is not to say religion is bad or that you shouldn't, but I do think it is a wise counsel from Walt Whitman. Consider what insults your soul, and then don't be in alliance with it. Pull yourself out of resonance with that and put yourself in resonance with what is largest and most noble.
Well, there's a lot of rabbit trails and tabs open, but I think for now we pretty much encapsulated what we wanted to talk about. And please get in contact with us. Tell us what music touches your soul, what movies or musicals touch your soul,
or
poetry.
Leave a comment. What does soul mean to you? We'd love to have comments from viewers. Yeah,
to me it just means a very personal way of connecting with life. Anyways, until next time, remember that you are the hero of your own journey.